Good afternoon and welcome to today's midnight training session. Today we'll be looking at our inventory module. In today's session, we'll be focusing on how to set up your warehouse, how to create new inventory items, how to receive inventory for both existing and for new items. And we'll be taking a look at transactions, both how to perform them, such as adds, subtracts, moves, and adjustments, and also how to create pickups and deliveries as far as tickets and documentation to go along with your transactions and required activity. Finally, I'll describe a few processes in which our inventory app can support the main inventory system of Midnight, with a more dedicated demo of the app in a future training session. Before we jump into the inventory app itself or the inventory module, we want to take a look at our admin menu. In here, we'll highlight a couple of key areas that will handle some of the drop-down menus that we take a look at for the duration of today. For starters, we'll take a look at warehouse management administrative control, as this is required as a preliminary setup in order to utilize and store inventory in our system. We can see warehouse controllers underneath our warehouse locations list. In here, you can see the ability to define your new locations. All exist on the left, with options for more detail selectable as you progress to the right. You can add a new description or warehouse location name at the bottom of the screen under the gray row, and fill out more detail as you need, such as the section, bay, shelf, and storage location type. Upon completing the requirements of adding in this case, only a name and any other optional info, you can click the Save Disk button to commit this record into the list of currently existing locations and have it available for inventory designation. The controls for this list, section, bay, shelf, location type, and warehouse, can all be defined within the warehouse submodule here. We'll start by looking at warehouse, which represents the building itself in which you would have designated as your storage center. You can create a new warehouse and assign a default receiving location necessary for the inventory app to get inventory into the system if a location is not selected. And of course, if need be, you can edit the contents of one of your warehouse names or default locations by clicking the Edit button, renaming your choices as necessary, and clicking the Save. One thing to be aware of is that the method of adding new instances of data or making modifications to pre-existing values is largely the same between this screen and many of the others that we'll be touching in the admin menu. So I won't be going over them in greater detail for each area as we proceed through today's session. Finally, the ability to search and sort for data based on the search filters here at the top can be utilized, in which if you type in information, you can run filters to only get back info that is relevant to your choice. This is similar to what you'll see in the various modules across Midnight: inventory, orders, estimates, etc. So again, this needs little explanation. As you saw me add a warehouse, the others, which are optional, can still be controlled under their respective choices underneath the warehouse admin menu. Choices such as location type, section, slot and shelf, and bay all exist under here. They can be modified by name or through simple addition. And if they are being unused, you can delete them from view entirely. The next requirement to get your inventory into the system is to have your item types defined. Your item types can also be accessed from within the warehouse module. By selecting in here, you can see, view, modify, and create new item types with which to classify your inventory as. Additionally, the column on the right, or Show on Calc, allows your item types available or designated inventory to appear on the print calculators for usage within our estimating system. Certain choices like envelope, paper, roll, or simple paper may need to exist under general access and accessibility or with the print calculator. Others, like laminate, stickers, and binding utilities and such, may not need to appear there, meaning that you can leave this checkbox unchecked and leave the estimating system's search function much more clean. Additionally, we have customizable fields available for the inventory records themselves. These customizable fields are what we refer to as user-defined fields, and we can find them under here by selecting Item. In this case, you'll see up to 30 available options, up to 50 available options in which you can add to control details for your inventory records. And in order to use these, you can activate them by clicking the Edit button for that UDF, adjusting the label name to something that does not match the field name, giving that UDF field a type such as text, currency, or date, filling in a mask or pre-selected text value, and inputting a field size or maximum character length for which the cell can actually store data for you. You'll see other choices in here, such as for estimates, orders, item requests, and purchase order items. We'll cover some of these in our more dedicated modules, but their behavior is largely the same. We have a few other areas to take a look at. Working up, we have our reason codes. When you're adjusting your inventory counts by force, rather than by simply adding or subtracting, removing or pulling inventory for your specific items, you can provide a reason for which to define the purpose of the adjustment. These choices here allow you to pre-select some options and fill out your information more quickly. Finally, under the Global Settings menu, there's two different areas in which we can integrate with the inventory system from here. The first of which is the Auto Deduct Inventory subsection of our Company Settings menu. These checkboxes allow the system to track and deduct inventory from within an order rather than on the item level itself or through the inventory app. When you have the actual drop date or close date boxes checked, or alternatively when you have both checked, in an order, applying one of these dates will actually allow you to have a pop-up appear, prompting you as the user to define the locations and confirm the quantities with which to pull inventory from. If you have the version checkbox checked, then within an order's version, or if you don't use versioning just within your order, you'll be able to quickly associate your inventory for deduction by just checking the deduct box underneath your inventory module. The other area controlled in the admin menu is the inventory tabs display inventory sublink on orders and inventory reorder point email notification. The more important one, the reorder point email notification, allows you to set up several emails, comma separated, to allow you and your team to be made aware of when quantities of a specific item or items fall below a predefined value that you determine as the reorder point. An email is sent out to each user listed, separated by comma again, conveying information of the item itself, the current balance of the inventory, the reorder point, and a suggested reorder amount based on another value in which you define for the item. Now on to the items themselves, which can be accessed under the warehouse module. In here, you start by being brought to the item search screen. And this screen, by default, loads all of your active inventory. You can see the active status is defined here as yes. You can also use any of the other fields that you see here as filters to sort and apply filters to your data, either by adding in information within the item name, description, etc. columns, or by clicking the individual column header name to apply sorts. By clicking Reset Filters, you return this sort back to its default. Or by clicking the Clear Filters button here on the right, you'll remove the filter omitting inactive orders and anything else you may have entered, and simply allow everything to be displayed. There are other search options available as well under the blue extended search bar. In here, you can select up to 3 different user-defined fields that are currently existing in your UDF list with which to search by. You can also do a search and sort based on location or by customer code. Do bear in mind that the location search does checks for inventory balances that are actually in a particular location, meaning that if you search for an item and it does not have any inventory in that location, it won't show up when searching by location. To edit one of your pre-existing items, there's several ways to do so. You can either click any one of the blue text options within one of your item records, or if you're entering an item that you recently accessed, the recently viewed pop-out on the left side will show your 10 most recently accessed inventory records. This is user specific. It will allow you to generate that information even if you access that info from a different computer. Now, when adding, creating, or editing an item, we do need to make sure that we have a customer name defined. Inventory in Midnight is linked to customers, and therefore all items need to be associated with a customer, even house inventory. In these cases, we do suggest that you create a customer identified as in-house or self-named, so that way you can at least enter them into the system without having any sort of complications. The item type can be selected from the list in which you control in the admin menu. The item code on any newly created items will be auto-generated by referencing the customer code and then a 5-digit number sequentially created from our automation process. And one other thing to note is that the item code for all items must be a unique value. It cannot be the same as any other inventory records. The item name, description, customer part number, version number, all of this info is optional, although we do, of course, suggest adding at least an item name and/or description. The create date defines itself as you create an item and can be updated as need be by simply overriding it. The active checkbox, of course, determines whether or not your item is active or not. The global checkbox, when checked, allows your item to be selected on any customer's order. This is important because if you have a particular stock that you do not want a customer to have access to, for instance, a stock provided to you specifically for work for one of your other clients, then you'll want to make sure that the global box is unchecked. And for in-house goods that can be used on any job at any point, make sure this box is checked. Kit and discontinued, as well as serialized, digital asset, and print on demand are all checkboxes that don't have any determined logic or value. The PO item, however, makes this inventory record and all others with the PO item checked available in your vendors, so that way they can be classified as a frequently purchased item and thus available for selection on your POs. The item ID here relates to the auto generation sequence that our system handles and is utilized for barcode generation. This integrates with our app, the inventory app, and will print out on some of our standard reports such as work orders or pull slips. Other information that you see here in the Details tab, UPC code, lead time days, count per container, are stock values in which your data can be stored in. However, everything under the reorder point and reorder quantity, which are used for that email notification, such as the print job number and miscellaneous part name, are all fields that are used by default as that UDF field in which you would have designed and set up within your admin module's UDF selector. The unit value is utilized for job costing information. And if you're using anything for inventory selection on an order, other than accessing the item as a print estimate item or through your calculator, this is the pricing instance that's utilized. If you're utilizing print estimating, then that info comes from the paper details tab and has a whole other dedicated training session on the topic. Finally, you can assign an item to your job's inventory. To your inventory. The item records themselves can have images added through either the app or through the website. To add a file, click Choose File here for the image upload. And then to view it, you can click the View button here. Other information that can be accessed within the item record itself are the quantities of your item. It shows a global view, letting you know what's on hand, minus a reserved count for an item, which means any job that has not yet had deductions made against it and that are still open, to give you a total available count to let you and your team know whether or not something needs to be ordered or restocked, or if your count is just fine as is. Now the Locations tab will show you the location or warehouse and the individual area that your quantities for your item are stored at. This list can be made up of several different locations, as you can have goods scattered across several shelves, buildings, or otherwise. And how they got here can be accessed and viewed within the Receipts tab or the Transactions tab, in which instances of getting your inventory into the system can be tracked with greater detail, with both a date and timestamp, and the information of the user who added it. The other pieces of information here, such as the type of receive, let you know how the item got into the system or quantity got modified. If an item is running through the receiving process, then a type of receive is added. If you were to simply use the add, subtract, or adjustment, you would see adjust listed, and so on. Other tabs that don't get quite as much use are substitutes, which allow you to designate an alternative item to be selected if the count of the item that you're trying to use is too low to complete the order's requirement for their job or jobs. And the lots tab, which are different shipments of the same inventory item record, where each shipment can have a different piece cost, could be produced by a different vendor, could have a different expiration date, or some combination of all three. In order to use this, you do need to have first in, first out, or last in, first out enabled in the global settings menu. And last, from within the screen in terms of interactive functionality, we have the items add, move, subtract, or adjust buttons, which when selected allow you to adjust your inventory through one means or another, and designate your transactions to a specific order if required. When doing an adjustment of any kind, add, subtract, move, or adjust, you do need to make sure that your location or locations are selected and that your quantity is set to a non-zero value. And immediately as you make your transaction changes, you'll see updates made to the quantity of the item with a timestamp, the username, and more detail within the locations tabs and quantities saying where you are and what you have en masse. Now that was an add. We can also do a subtraction from within the item record itself. In here, we select the location in which we're pulling our goods from, list an associated order if necessary, and list a count with which to adjust our quantity by. We'll also try a move, which in this case allows you to take goods from one of your items and relocate to a different location. The last thing to really convey in an inventory record are the reports. We do have several available by default, such as item labels, skid flags, transaction audits or histories reports, and also the receipt history of the items themselves. We do have more reports in the inventory module listed under the reports module here. Many of these will show information such as how much is available, costs of your inventory, a variety of location tags, which can be printed and set up to label your different locations as need be, and other reports such as reorder checks, date checks for potential expired inventory, an inactivity report to show inventory in your system that has not had any transactions made on it for a certain period of time. When handling a subtraction, for instance, where you can pick and make adjustments of your count as need be, you can pick your item, assign it to a job if need be, and then you'll be able to populate job costing records for expenses of inventory, as long as the unit value of the item is greater than $0. Take a look at our transactions. We'll see details of what we've done. We've done 2 subtracts. We've also done what appears to be 2 moves, but is really only 1, as what we've done is removed location quantity of 2,000 from here and moved it to this location here. The adjustment behaves much like the move, only in this case you're just changing the number of account. You can assign it to an order if you need, and plug in a reason code if you're making an adjustment and have to define why. Now, there are a few other ways to get inventory into your system without modifying the ones that already exist. You can either click the New Inventory Item button here. You can, under the Quick Links, hit Receive Item, or click this Receive Item here to get the count into the system. Or within the job, you can click the Quick Links button and select one of the options in order to get new inventory added straight to the job itself. This will subsequently add inventory to the module itself to return and go back in to make adjustments as necessary. But in here you can fill out some of the basics, such as the materials, dimensions, and color if it's a stock, and other goods such as whole items like calendars with an expiration date if it comes in as a shell or otherwise. Now, in order to receive an item, you would want to, within the inventory module itself, click the Receive button under normal circumstances. And in here, you'll need to select a customer in which the item is assigned to be part of. If you're receiving goods against a PO, you can select the PO, and any items that are on the PO will translate themselves straight into the received here. You can also assign a receive process to one of your orders as necessary, or you can simply stick it onto one of your shelves by making sure the inventory's counts here are correct, clicking the Assign for the Way button to designate where exactly it goes, and then clicking the Save and Close button to actually put it in. Do make sure that when adjusting your inventory counts for the put away purposes here, you make sure that your actual quantity is 1 and that your skids, containers per skid, parts per container, and loose equal out to the actual quantity. Now in this case, we can create an inventory receipt report that lets us see a document highlighting the fact that we just received an item. We can print the skid flag for the report if we need to immediately relocate it and determine where else we have it. Or we could simply save and close, which provides us with a prompt wanting to know if we'd like to close the PO associated with the transaction we just performed. Click yes in this instance, and now we have a completed PO. Now finally within here, we have the item request submodule. In here, as you create your item request for pickup, delivery, move, or destroy, you can also edit or re-access these as needed by doing the same stuff that you had done earlier. That is by either clicking an instance of the request or by selecting it from your recently viewed. In here, you can fill out your own info. This info corresponds to the request of the appropriate type to make sure that your inventory is properly being altered as how it needs to be. Do note that in these cases, when you're performing transactions, you can hit the Subtract Inventory button here to make a pull if it's being sent or relocated to an offsite premise. And if your item isn't already selected, you can select them from here. Each core module here, pick up, move, destroy, and adjust, have their own command buttons to allow you to control the inventory assigned. And as info is completed, either by your team internally or the ones who are adding these in, they can fill out a completed by name along with the date done to indicate that their work's been complete. We can see one or several of our reports by accessing them through reports pop out on the right, in which you see details of the recipient, as well as the goods which are being relocated. Finally, I do want to highlight the inventory's deduction process through the orders itself. As you add inventory to orders, you'll be able to access them through the inventory app. The inventory tab. And inventory can be added in several ways, either through the print calculator or just by hand through the add item command, or finally by the create quick inventory button here in the quick links. The counts here have a quantity needed default to what you have listed as your expected quantity and can be overwritten as need be. You'll see details after picking your item, which eventually may contribute to a reserved count. The reserved value here is made up of all of the non-deducted against inventory records that you have on a particular job. Finally, if you were to add a new item or need to adjust one of your items that are in here, you simply click in and make the choices as set, knowing that your quantity needed here defaults to what we have within our expected quantity tab. If you attempt to do something like perform a deduction of a specific item, we'll pick one with a large count, then you can do so by setting the close date or shipped date with the value of non-null or not empty based on the checkboxes that you had set within the admin menu for auto deduction. Or alternatively, you can click the deduct button here, which is controlled by the version checkbox. And it gives us the option to deduct inventory that we have from a spot that we know it to be in. We've now performed a deduction, and we have a pulled count here. And if we exit the job, jump into the item record, and take a look at the item ID or whatever inventory record that we have, we can see the transaction history of the item itself within the Transactions tab, knowing detail that it was me who did it, with the timestamp, order number, and count command. Before we wrap up today's session, I'll take a look at some more of our inventory reports. You can see under our Reports module's Inventory Report subtab that we have quite a few available. The more commonly used ones include the Available Inventory Report, which shows your inventory en masse, and just the simple quantities available on hand and reserved. As mentioned earlier, the Inventory Inactivity Report allows us to see records of inventory that have not been utilized in order-based transactions over a period of time. This is useful for being aware of inventory that has not been used for a long time and that you may be storing that you may want to charge for. Other reports, such as the Inventory Reorder Report, take a quick look of your inventory, your on-hand count, how many you need to reorder if a reorder point gets triggered, and what the reorder trigger point is. Our Inventory Transaction Detail Report, which shows activity history of all of your inventory over a period of time. Our location tags report, which prints one tag based on each location you have designated in pages of 6. Our physical count by slot location report, which allows you to see an expected quantity of goods at a particular location with an open field for a physical overwrite. And finally, our yearly item status report, which allows you to pick a particular customer and run a report check to see how much of usage a particular item got over a period of time. That sums up today's inventory module training session. I'll go ahead and wrap things up by taking off mute for everyone and opening everything up for Q&A.